Dublin's hit music station FM104. It's the Strawberry Alarm Clock, and in studio is a broadcasting legend, one of Ireland's top broadcasters, top journalists. We're always taking the mickey out of him, but today we won't, because Joe Duffy, good afternoon to you.
How are you doing? Good
Good to see
you. Sure.
Yeah. Do you get sick of people doing that?
I don't. No, I don't. My young fellas love it,
Yeah.
and they're the ones that bring it to my attention all the time.
Yeah.
I keep saying, God, that's not me, is it? And I say, no, it's not me. And then the likes of you do someone else and say, my God, they're very good at doing Enda or Bertie or whoever else, or Louis, or whoever else it is. I say, hang on, if they're very good at doing Louis and Bertie, they must be. Hang on, add 2 and 2 and you get embarrassment.
People do say good afternoon to you. It's become part of the language now, good afternoon. I'll ring Joe. It's all these kind of phrases are part of the...
Well, when we said, Joe's coming in, what would you like to ask him? There was a lot of text saying, who's your sexy Joe?
Yeah.
And that was it. That was the only question we wanted to ask.
You're playing that again, I hear.
We're playing that again?
Yeah,
we've updated it.
You've resurrected it.
We've resurrected it.
Updated it.
It's now even sexier, it is.
That's possible.
Who did somebody?
And I have a hairy back, by the way.
Do you?
Yeah.
I won't ask you about the rest.
Embarrassment. You can see it at 6:30 every morning down the Westwood Pool in Fairview. Tickets on sale now via Ticketmaster. Credit card charges apply, and we're limiting to 4 per person.
You wouldn't give us a who's a sexy Joe?
Who's a sexy Joe?
Fair play to you.
The book.
Somebody wanted to know, who does Joe Duffy ring when, if you want to complain, if something happens to you in a shop, who do you ring?
I don't complain. And by the way, I've had up to, and including recently, I've had occasion to complain or whatever. And my wife June says, under no circumstances are you ringing we were in a restaurant and they were under serving whatever they were supposed to. What was on the menu wasn't what was being delivered in terms of size or whatever. And I said, this is a rip-off. Yeah. And I said, I was getting more and more annoyed. You get more and more annoyed. Yeah. And then she said to me, under no circumstances are you to say it. If you say anything, I'm walking out. So that's the end of it. So basically, I'm ripped off, abused, robbed, defrauded, wherever I go.
No one to call.
Because I know I can't call anybody.
He can't say, I'm ringing Joe Duffy about this.
No.
Yeah.
And I don't have Pat Kenny's home number, and Adrian Kennedy ignores me call.
And my mother-in-law wanted me to ring you. She said, Joe, can you get me on the show? She got ripped off of some mobile phone thing, and they signed her up for something that she didn't ask for. And she was ringing me, can you get me on with Joe? I said, no, I can't ring Joe. Just ring up yourself. I can't do it. Bump me up the list. Get me on the show. So the book, Just Joe.
Just Joe, yeah. It was originally called Footprints in the Custard, but the publisher wouldn't let me go with it because they thought people might think it's a cookery book. And Footprints in the Custard is, of course, basically the opening chapter, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I said, well, maybe if they thought it was a cookery book, they might buy it and leave it on their shelves like they do and never open it. You know the way?
Yeah.
But anyway, they changed the name to Just Joe. Just simple as that.
It's pretty simple. So why Footprints in the Custard?
Footprints in the Custard is the opening story. It's something that's been in my head for a long, long time. I don't know if people might remember there was a stew house in Ballyfermot. This is when things were bad in the 60s, and people actually depended on free food, believe it or not. Now I know there's still a food centre in the centre of Dublin for people who are really stuck, but there were stew houses all over the city. Stew house, it was free food. And you brought down your own pots. Okay, that was the kick. You brought down your own pots, and the food was ladled into your pots at lunchtime: potatoes, cabbage, bacon, and then custard. Yeah. And the only way you didn't have cars, the only way you get them home is either in your pram or else put them under the stairs on the open platform bus, the 78 bus, the platform. So this woman put them under the stairs, and as where we lived in Ballyfermot, my mother still is, there's loads of corners, and the last corner all the pots toppled over. Okay? Yeah. So the platform is just a sea of yellow custard. Right, and we're all queuing up to get down the stairs, and the bus conductor's gone berserk. He was after ruining my bus because he would have lost the rest of his shift. Yeah, right. Yeah. He said, "Who ruined my bus? Who's after ruining my bus? It's destroyed." Blah blah blah. And the woman she's a great woman, actually, 10 children from around the corner. The woman who owned the pots, Mrs. Pender, great woman. She was. We all knew they were her pots, and we were waiting for her. And she just lifted up her head, held it high, and walked through the custard. Okay, and stepped off the bus and walked away leaving her pots behind, and we all followed her off, and the pots were left behind, and the woman was whatever too embarrassed. She kept her dignity, by the way, but she was too embarrassed to say that she'd been to the stew house. I just thought it was an interesting picture, and I looked down. I can vividly see the footprints in the custard, her little footprints getting on. She had a black overcoat, and it just struck me as something that was an example of what things were like at that time. On the one hand, you were going for free food, on the other hand, you were embarrassed.
Yeah.
That's life in Ballyfermot.
And how old were you at the time then?
I'd say I was 56. I was born. I was about 10 or 11. I was coming up from school.
I saw a cartoon today, and there's a picture of a little boy with glasses, and he's on his own in the schoolyard. Have you seen this picture?
No,
it's a little cartoon. I must give it to you. And there's other kids in the playground, but they're not talking to him. And it says, "One day they'll all want to talk to me," said the little Joe Duffy.
That's very good. You should actually get it framed. It's very, very good. So you talk about Ballyfermot with great memories, and at the time there's big deals about you going to Trinity, being from there. Is there still that sort of thing in Dublin that, depending on where you come from, do you get better chances in life? Doesn't matter anymore.
I mean, unfortunately that's the society we live in. Working class people are not as healthy, with their teeth, for example, that are not as healthy as people from D4 or whatever. There are changes there, and one of the lessons or the messages in the book is that the changes that have occurred in the last 40 years have been bigger than any changes in our society, I think, previously. And the point I'm making is, I went from a situation where my granny lived in a place called Keogh Square, which is Inchicore, St. Michael's Estate now. It was an old army barracks. This was in the 60s, after JFK and all that nonsense. This was still happening in Dublin. She was living in this one room. We used to go down with the whole novelty factor because we could toast bread on the open fire with a fork. She had an open fire for cooking. The toilet was out the back. There was no running water. It was basically one room. That was the 60s. And then we come to a situation where those living conditions just do not exist. They're in my lifetime. My own children, who are now 16, remember my granny. So I'm saying that the leap that's happened has been fantastic. A lot more to go. Now, I'd also say when I went to Trinity, there was 40,000 people living in Ballier. Three of us from Ballier went to Trinity. Today, in my mother's block, four of them in Claddagh Green, 4 houses in Claddagh Green. She's still there, as I say. 3 out of the 4 houses have sent people on to third level education. And if there's any message in the book, getting serious for a moment, it is, in these difficult times, let no one get demoralised. You get demoralised about the recession and the IMF and the Troika and the Standard & Poor's and all that rubbish. Don't get demoralised about education. Do not get demoralised. It has its own self-worth. Try and keep going. Try and stay in. If you do happen to leave for whatever reason, maybe do a night course or whatever, but try and keep going.
Was it difficult in RTE, to come up through the ranks and everything? Did you have any trouble with the Dublin accent? Because RTE had very plummy RTE voices.
Well, I was never... It's a Dublin working class accent they have. The Dublin accent now is the Dart accent, isn't it? That's the predominant.
Well, there's a few different Dublin accents now, yeah.
But when people talk about a Dublin accent, that's what they mean, the Dublin working class accent. Initially, I wasn't accepted into RTE. I got an offer of a place on a producer training course. Yeah. I never, ever, Jim-Jim, envisaged myself being on air.
Right.
That wasn't... I wanted to be a producer. I wanted to make programmes. I wanted to come up with ideas. I wanted to do things in terms of production. And then I only got on air through working with Gay Byrne, and we needed a reporter one day. We didn't have a reporter on the programme at the time, the Gay Byrne show. It used to be on the morning time. And he just said, mobile phones were coming in, actually, around 1989, 90. They were becoming more... Are less heavy is the best way of describing them. And he said, go out and do it. And he said, just do it in the way we have a conversation now. You're not a reporter. You haven't been trained as a reporter. Don't do it. You're not Charlie Bird. You'll never be Charlie Bird, unfortunately. And just be yourself. And that's what I did. I just started these conversations, and they weren't only conversations, light conversations with Gay Byrne from the centre of the city, all on mobile phones.
I remember
that was a kick.
I was off school one day, and everyone used to listen to Gay Byrne, when they were off school, sick or whatever, and you were up a crane, I remember, because I remember very clearly, and you described everything you could see. That
was Temple Bar.
Temple Bar.
Yeah, when you were building Temple Bar. And we actually got the if I remember correctly, which is, I love heights anyway, and I love cranes, and I love big, high fire engine ladders and all that rubbish. And what we were doing then, there was a new street being created, down in Temple Bar. You know the way they were reconfiguring the buildings, and they wanted had a competition to rename the street. It was a curved street. Just a curved street. So we had a brilliant competition. People came up with incredible names like Einstein Street, Gayborn Street, Joe Duffy Street. And the list was endless, and it was very, very creative. And eventually, the Temple Bar authorities looked at all the names, and they decided to call it the Curved Street.
Curved Street. They should have a Joe Duffy Street. It's about time. And a Gayborn Street.
Or the Freedom of Somewhere.
Was it scary to work with Gaybo? Because he was the main man. Wasn't he?
It was scary. One, because I had complained about him before, believe it or not. I had complained about him.
So you do complain?
Yes. That's in the days when I couldn't talk to Joe. I was talking to myself. I had when I was a probation officer, he'd done a program where he basically interviewed himself, if you follow me. Yeah. And I thought this was, and he said the country was banjacks. It was during the last recession. And I put in a complaint saying I thought it was unfair for him basically to interview himself. He was being interviewed by another broadcaster, but on his own program, if you follow me. Yeah. And it could only happen on radio. And so I was a bit kind of wary. But Gay's bottom line is the program.
Right.
The program has to work. He would sell his granny. In fact, has anyone seen his granny lately? He would sell his granny. Yeah. He would sell his granny for a good program. That's his bottom line. He's a great worker. He produced the Late, remember? You know, he was the one that came up with ideas and what way items should be dealt with or whatever. So you were in awe of him, but that goes fairly quickly because you've just got to, you know, these are he's a very normal guy, you know. But initially I was, but he was very, very supportive, as he was, by the way, to lots of other people. Jerry Ryan, Philip Kampf, the list, you know, there's a big long list out there of people that Gay has pushed up and nurtured, more so than any other broadcaster.
I always like your story, Jim, from when you met him about the bust.
Oh yes, I said to you, the first time I ever met Gay Byrne, it was one of those things, there he is, because he's such a legend. And when I first started working in RTE, I used to pat the bust at the car park there. For a look.
You can see it's rubbed down a bit, actually.
Yeah, I go doink doink, and I go in, and I said to him, you know, I used to pat the bust of you for a look when I first started here, and he was kind of that thing he does on his feet, and you know, rocking back and forth. Right. Quite right too. Quite right.
He has a very high opinion of himself. After
that time, you would. So it sounds like you have a great memory. Was it hard remembering all the things for this book, or was it?
I have a good memory. I had pictures in my head from my childhood, especially, and once I could, like some of the stories, I've tried to tell them, and I've tried to tell them through the eyes of whatever age I was at the time. That Mrs. Pender story, I was around 10. Other stories, 12, 14 or whatever. No, but they came back. Now, by the way, I misremember things as well. I mean, I gave the book to a few people to read, and they said, hang on.
That didn't happen.
Your man left school 2 years before you said he murdered the teacher. You know what I mean? But little things like that.
I missed that chapter.
Or little names. You know, you get names right or wrong.
That's understandable.
And how do you decide? I mean, there's some painful memories in there, and there's some happy memories, and you just pick the big ones that just...
Yeah, well, I wrote the original manuscript I wrote was twice as long, so that was a big issue about what you take out, how you get rid of stuff, or what do you do with stuff. And then I decided only to write about things I had directly experienced, that I had been there or had happened to me, and that's the template I worked on for that book, that I would only talk about things that happened to me and how they affected me. And also I tried to bear in mind if they affected me in terms of things I did subsequently, especially on Liveline, or issues I dealt with, then they were bumped up to the top of the list in terms of trying to give people a picture, an honest picture of what formed me or whatever, or what influences me.
You mentioned being in awe of Gaybo at first, and I have to say, when I worked in RT, I got it was incredible to see two of my broadcasting heroes, yourself and Jerry Ryan, having one of your famous chats. And I've heard you talking about these chats you'd have between programs, and I could never hear what you were saying, but the two of you were like two bold schoolboys.
We were saying, how do we get rid of Jim? Anyway, getting rid of him. Is there any...
Whatever it was, it worked.
It worked.
Exactly. It took us 4 years.
Well, we've lost.
And Jim used to be over at the mixing desk, and he was always working on with the headphones on, and you were always working there. Yeah. And I'm almost sure I used to say to you, creativity, because you were brilliant at it, and the station's brilliant at it as well.
Yeah.
You know, playing with sound, coming up with ideas is what it's all about.
Yeah,
much more valuable commodity than anything else, than a degree from a journalist. I don't really have a degree or not, but it's a much more, you know, when young people say to me, I want to be a journalist, I say, what's stopping you? Like, what is stopping you? Nothing is stopping you. Work for your local community. Oh no, I want to work in FM104, or I want to work. No, you have to start where you are.
Yeah.
If you want to write a letter to a newspaper, see can you get it published, build up a portfolio.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Do. And that's one mistake I made with the book as well. Before I had written things like the Mrs. Pender chapter and other little pieces. And then I started this kind of, got into the authorial kind of frame of mind. I'm writing a book. So I've been writing newspaper columns for 23 years and keeping bits of diaries and scrapbook. So I laid them out all in a room, and I used to gossip myself away every morning and evening at weekend. I numbered all the columns. I wrote down all the different topics and themes. And I did this for about 4 months. And then someone said to me, how's the writing going? And I said, no, I haven't written that. For God's sake, just write.
Yeah.
Stop all this nonsense of just write, see what comes out, then we'll try and put a shape on it. And I say the same. That's a lesson for people. If you want to be a journalist, be a journalist. If you want to be a radio reporter, you have it on your phone even, go along, look up the diary of David Norris, whoever else is in the election at the minute, and follow them around today. Nobody will stop you. Yeah. Be. Do your course as well and get into networks as best you can. If you want to be a journo, be a journo. A radio reporter, be one, and see how things happen and fall.
I hope you're inspiring people now who are listening.
What was it like having 3 babies in the house at the one time? Because Jim, we've been talking about how tired he is. He only has 1.
Just the one. And
when 3 come along, it must be
tiring for
quite
one.
life-changing.
We wonder how the hell can you do 3 at the same time? How did you do it?
It was, wouldn't be no choice.
Well, I know.
We couldn't say to the hospital, will you hang on to them?
Did you have somebody move in with you? Or
no, well, for the first 3 months, we paid someone to come at midnight.
Yeah.
And leave at 7, so that's 7 hours.
Okay.
And they stayed in with them. Rita was her name. She's a great woman.
Do you have her number, do you?
I think she's retired to the Seychelles or something for a rest. And the other little things that we did, we got one room and we completely changed the room. When June was in hospital, she was in hospital for a good long time before the triplets were born. And I put in a sink, I put in a table, I put in a fridge, I put in a kettle, I put in 2 armchairs, I put in 3 cots, I got 3 diaries, your day-to-day diaries.
Yeah.
With a big knitting needle, cut a hole in the diary, tied them to each cot so people couldn't move them and lose them. Put in a very good radio, didn't put in a television, put in a very good radio. And the idea was that once you got into that room, you didn't have to leave it. You didn't have to be running up and down to get water. You didn't have to be running up and down to boil a kettle. You didn't have to be running up and down to the fridge. Everything was self-contained. And then when people came and said, can I take the 3 of them out on a triple buggy? First of all, we didn't buy a triple buggy. Ridiculous. Do not buy a triple buggy when you have triplets, Jim. One, it'll be too heavy within about a fortnight.
Right.
Secondly, you're drawing attention to yourself. And thirdly,
that's good advice.
Thirdly, they're just the 3 kids will seldom want to go out together. Yeah. One of them will be asleep or whatever.
Right.
So what we did was people come and say, can I do anything? Yeah, go up to that room, open the diary, see what time who's the last one to be fed, are they due a feed them, and then write it in the diary.
Brilliant.
Okay.
That's
see,
so
if you do a nappy, you write it in the diary.
That's organised. But at first, when you heard you were having triplets, the head must have spun for a while.
Yeah, it was in terrible shock.
Jumping to 3 of them.
Terrible shock. And I was dealt with decisively afterwards by another medic, so there's no more after the triplets. I can hasten to add.
Joe, you're a big fan of walking, aren't you?
Yeah, I like walking.
Where's your? I remember one morning on Twitter you put up a great picture from the Great Bull Wall.
Yeah.
One of your favourite places.
I do that if I can. I couldn't this morning, but if I can, I do it very early. Oh yeah, absolutely. No traffic, straight up and down. No traffic, and a different scene every morning because the tide, the birds, the ships, the other people walk. There's always I always say to myself, and I go out in all weathers in shorts again. Hairy legs, Jim. Hairy legs. Yeah. Okay.
Too much
available. I know.
Too much
more lyrics.
Too much information. And there's always I describe it as a moment. It could be a seal or a bird or just the ships passing or whatever, or the sun coming up. It's so close to the city centre. It's a wonderful site. I just like walking, and you've hit on something now. I like solo I like swimming, obviously. So you're on my own. I like walking. I like reading. I am that little boy in the middle of the schoolyard. It's coming back to me now.
They all talk to you during the day, so you want to be on your own.
I'm the little boy that Santa Claus forgot, and goodness knows he didn't want a lot. He sent a note to Santa for some sweets and some toys, and then he was left alone without all the other boys. I'm so sorry for that laddie. He didn't have a daddy. He's the little boy that Santa Claus forgot.
Oh God, love him. So Liveline, you're going to keep on rolling with Liveline for as long as you can?
That's for others to decide. You know yourself with our places. Like someone could decide after this interview that I said something wrong, and I couldn't even get a letter. I'd read about it in the Star tomorrow. Duffy axed.
You can get off your chest with Adrian. He loves you.
Duffy axed. No, and by the way, there'll be no. I'm not under any illusion the business we're in. If you're gone, you're gone. There'll be no pickets at the gate, or there's no going in saying I got A's in me leaving cert, which I didn't. But you know what I mean. That's the business. But I love doing it. I do love doing it, and we have a very good team at the minute, and you're trying all the time. You're like yourselves, daily program. You can't rest on your laurels or whatever. You did a good program today. Your next agenda is, what are we going to try and do tomorrow? You know, and we have a good feedback and good audience and a national audience, given the nature of the station, and that helps.
I was told by Larry Gogan, never have an anniversary, never celebrate an anniversary, especially in RTE, because once you do, they'll go, is he on there 20 years? Let's get rid of him.
I know.
So he said never.
You know what the motto in RTE is, or any big organisation: if it ain't broke, break it.
Do you think the papers especially are really giving Tubridy a hard time at the moment?
I think they are, but that's, Tubbs is up there. He's number one. He's doing the Late Show. He's offers from the BBC. That comes with the territory, and I think RTE should almost appreciate the fact that I think it was one day this week there was 3 front page stories about 3 RTE. I happen to be one of them, as it happened, and Tubbs was the other one, and Gable was the other one. I mean, that helps the image of that shows how big and how important and how impactful the organisation is, and I think RTE should recognise that. He is. I as people know, I like him an awful lot. I think he's a very good broadcaster. They've made some changes to his morning programme, which I wouldn't be happy with in terms of getting rid of the papers or whatever, but that's just my producer hat coming out again. And again, I think that one of the issues in radio is it's very hard to know what gets listeners in. And it's very hard to know if you lose listeners why you're losing. It
takes time to,
and it does take time. You build it up again. It comes back to that voice thing.
Well, he's everybody's favourite punch bag at the moment. Which I suppose he's got to take skin for it. He knows when he took the gig on. I suppose, yeah.
Well, the problem is that every time you see a headline about Tubbs at the minute is Ryan Tubridy in Grafton Street, then in brackets. Worried about falling figures. Ryan Tubridy at football match in brackets. Worried about late show or whatever, and at this stage he doesn't know who his real parentheses are. You know what I mean?
There was a picture a few weeks ago that said he was out of touch because he had the Irish Times under his.
That was nonsense.
It was nonsense.
He's not out of touch.
Does any of that?
By the way, that gag obviously went above your head or whose head?
I got it. Yeah.
Who are his real parentheses?
Brilliant. I don't know who his real parentheses are, but it changes daily, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Does it bother you, any of that kind of stuff?
No. No, I've never written. I've never. You have to kind of break it to your kids. You know what I mean? That you're not the father they think. You know what I mean? That you're not as good But the thing I say is, one, you're never as good as the critics say you are. You're never as bad as the critics say you are. And the second thing is, you can't find a Sunday Independent on the Monday. You can't find the Daily Mail Thursday edition on a Friday. You know what I mean? Yeah. Papers come and go, and you have to keep your head. And sometimes critics they need to write something every week. I know what it's like. You need to. Yeah. And there's no point. If you write every week, Joe Duffy or Strawberry Alarm Clock or whatever is brilliant. Well, it's just boring, isn't it?
You need the angle.
Yeah. You need the twist.
Well, listen. Best of luck with the book.
It's out now, is it?
Yeah,
it's out now. Just Joe is the name of it.
I did door to door Clontarf. I'm doing Darndale, Dundalk, and all the odd numbers on Ballyfermot Road on Sunday morning.
Is anyone giving out to you? If anyone from Ballyfermot is looking up, saying, you didn't mention me, Joe.
No,
what's going on?
In fact, I'm getting lovely letters from people. I know sales of books in Ballyfermot have gone up, and anyone who can't sell the book is throwing it away.
We have where is the thing we have? We have it here at the. We have your music that we play every so often. Where is it gone? There it is. There we go. Good afternoon to you.
Has Joe ever met Joe?
No, I haven't.
How are you, Joe? Good afternoon to you, Joe. Yeah, okay, sure.
What am I calling you about?
You're calling to tell me about your book.
The book, yeah.
Go ahead, Joe.
I tried to get your man Joe Duffy's book. I can't get it anywhere. Sure. Is there a conspiracy? You can't see him.
I think there's a caller on. It says on my screen. There's books available in all good bookshops.
Well, I was in Easton's and the woman said they had 15 books. None of them sold, sure. So the 15 they must have been robbed.
Talk to Joe.
Joe, I can't find it anywhere.
We'll find you one. Just Joe is out now. Joe Duffy, it's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks, lad.
Thanks, Joe.
We'll see you soon. Cheers, man.
Cheers. Hello, a very good afternoon to you. You're listening to FM104. This is Joe on the show. Who's the sexy Joe? Who's the sexy Joe?
Good afternoon to you, Barbara.
FM104. The Strawberry Alarm Clock.